Hi everybody, great to see you all today. We're going to be talking to you about creating the employer brand for Compare the Market. I'm Sarah Sturgess, as just been introduced, so I'm from an organisation called SMRS. We're out there, so feel free to come and talk to us about anything around employer branding, culture, talent attraction.
And I'm Caroline Rains, I'm Director of Corporate Affairs at Compare the Market, and you'll all be sat there going, why on earth is the Director of Corporate Affairs talking to us about employer brand? Well, we've got a wonderfully broad remit. I'm very lucky at Compare the Market, and I look after everything from the consumer PR side right the way through the external comms sphere and public affairs, right through to internal comms, CSR, D&I, employer brand, hence why I'm working with Sarah. So I'm just going to take you a bit about our story so far as Compare the Market, a little bit about the brand. I'm hoping that some of you might recognise some of these fellas, including our newest character, which is a wombat called Carl from Australia. So we have, and we still are actually part of a much bigger group called BGL Group. Previously, that kind of was about insurance. So we had one side of our business that was insurance for some of the big household names, Lloyd's, Post Office, etc. And then on the other side, we had this price comparison business, which was trying to get people to switch from their original insurers and move around a bit. So there was a little bit of a tension there. And as a result, we kind of fell a bit below the radar. Probably about 2 years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, we sold on the insurance part of our business. So for the last 2 years, we've been purely about price comparison, and we have Compare the Market in the UK, and we also have Les Frais in Paris, but we're just focusing on Compare the Market today. And I think that gave us a number of challenges, and we'll talk about them throughout the presentation, but we sort of felt like overnight went from being a rather kind of big corporate financial services business to being a much, much smaller tech, data, marketing business. So those things come with quite a change in culture and personality, which also gave us a wonderful opportunity as well, not having the tension anymore in the business, to be able to explore how we could bring our employer brand a bit more closer to our consumer-facing brand that everybody knew and loved.
And when we get to work on employer brands, it's not every day that you get a cast of wombats and meerkats to work with. So it was a really interesting challenge for us. And one of the first things that we wanted to work out was, did people, colleagues, but also people externally, feel the same love and respect and excitedness about those wombats and meerkats? And we wanted to uncover that. So the first thing that we did actually was we did a piece of research externally so that we could test and understand what the brand perception was. But the people that we wanted to talk to were people who would be in the market, in the tech market, looking for roles in that area. Also, what we wanted to focus on were two key locations, Peterborough and London, so that we could really understand this question. What was very interesting out of those results, though, was that the survey actually said that, yes, 72% of respondents said they'd be really interested in a career with Compare the Market due to their brand. So that brand perception was carrying through to candidates really effectively. We also asked about some of the things that are very important around belonging and feeling that Compare the Market would be an inclusive place to work. And still that came back with a really high score of 68% as well. So what we started to see was clearly that brand perception was strong. There was loyalty there to the brand as well. So the first thing that made us think is, let's not walk away from the meerkats and the wombats. Let's see how they can feature in the employer brand.
Mm. And as mentioned earlier about the separation of the business, which takes us into this being a tech company. Problem being, though, that actually candidates didn't recognise us as a tech business. We're essentially a website now, if you remove all the insurance part of it. So we had to really think about how we would make ourselves attractive to a very different audience to perhaps where we've been recruiting before. And of course, I was listening to Andy's presentation actually with interest when he talked about the mystery shopping, and did people, when they were coming in, recognise the business from the journey they'd been on? And I think previously the answer would be no. Quite often you'd phone and say, hiring on behalf of BGL, or people who see a BGL ad and they go, never heard of that, who's that then? They go, oh, it's Compare the Market, it's about, they go, maybe I know Compare the Market. Go, you know the meerkats? And they go, oh yes, the meerkats, we know that. But then when people were going through their journey, completely absent. So we had to think about this tech employer. We also had to think about the other things, and I know I don't want to tread on what you're going to say later, but being based in, our headquarters are in Peterborough. It's a challenge for us, that location challenge, and fine during lockdown when everyone was remote, but we do bring people into the office for a certain number of days a month. So that was proving a bit of a challenge. We've got Vivek over there who does all our tech recruitment, and still remains a challenge, actually. So we had a locational challenge, and we had, how do we kind of make ourselves attractive to this new tech market where we've not really played before?
Okay, great. So to build on that, we were looking at two things really: external perception of the brand and potentially working at Compare the Market. To bolster that, the other thing that we also did, excuse me, was competitor analysis, and looked at a range of competitors who were out in the market, so that what we could start to look at was how to differentiate Compare the Market from those particular organisations. So on top of that as well, it became very important to start to get a feel of all of the characters within Compare the Market and everyone who worked there. What we wanted to understand was that internal perception, so why people joined, but also why they stayed. So to do that, we involved the leadership team, so we did leadership interviews across the business. We also carried out a number of focus groups. Those focus groups, though, were segmented by the different skill sets that were needed within Compare the Market. The reason for that is so that when we then come to attract in those areas, we know the nuances and the different motivations that came out of those different focus groups. So that's really important to do. We also took the information that already existed, so the employee engagement survey, and all of that fed in. We looked as well at the external market for tech talent, so where the challenges were, where the biggest skill problems were. Fed all of that in, and what was really interesting is one of the things that underlied all of that research was there's a real fun element at Compare the Market. So a lot of the people that we spoke to very much wanted to say, look, you know, the feeling of the external brand isn't coming through in anything that we're saying to candidates, that we're saying to our people. It kind of gets lost at a certain point. So there was a real desire to reinvigorate that throughout the whole of this employer brand process. So the first thing that we did was we took all of that information and we wrote a proposition. So that informed, all of the research informed the EVP. What you're seeing on screen here, you have to be a super fast reader to read it, but you can happily have a copy of this. But what we wanted to do was pull all of the themes that came out of that research into an elevator pitch, basically. Something that recruiters, internal comms teams, everybody could have at their fingertips to say, right, what are we saying about ourselves? Because even at the leadership team level, this was something that was really difficult for people to put their finger on and say, right, this is us, this is what we're all about. So we usually, in employer branding, we usually create that overarching proposition. What then sits under that is usually a number of themes that came out of the research. And again, those themes can often sort of relate to things like well-being, diversity and inclusion, career progression, etc. But there was this real desire within the business to be more fun and friendly and just come up with something a little bit different. So the next page, you'll see the attributes that we came up with.
And so the attributes, not to be confused with values, we've already got values, more about that in a bit, but these are our attributes. And I'm still right, this is all really new, and I'll tell you a story in a minute, but I'm not going to go there yet. So we came up with this fabulously furry. That was about the uniqueness of Compare the Market, the kind of diversity, the inclusivity of it. And I can see some laughs because I'm going to do it now.
Do it now.
I'm going to do it now.
Do it now.
So we tested these, and when we took fabulously furry to our employees, there was this kind of laughing around the room. I was like, what's doing? Because we love these, they're brilliant, we've been working on them, amazing, you know, it's a meerkat, it's fur. And I wasn't aware of the subculture of furries. And I'm not going to go into it now, but if any of you have TikTok or any...
Or just Google it.
Or just Google furries. It's not in there anymore, we're going to remove it. Sorry, I digress. I had to because I saw people laughing.
Yeah.
So originally fabulously furry, new attribute, work in progress. So I think we might have one. I think we agreed one on the train, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Breaking
well
news.
done.
Yeah.
Well
So and then that is about our inclusivity, our welcoming diversity there. Fearlessly focused is about our kind of relentless kind of pursuit to deliver for our customers, to kind of always do better. I'm looking at Amy down the back there because Amy worked on this. Am I missing anything, Amy? No. The pace of work, commerciality, all those good
Meeting
things.
your strategy.
Strategy, see. So new is this, we haven't even launched it yet. So that's why we're still a work in progress. Collectively ambitious is about collaboration. That's something we really value, working together to get better solutions. And kind of aiming high. We are an ambitious organisation, we always want to do better. But we don't, it's about what we value is the team rather than individuals. So that's what that one's about. And then alert to possibilities is the creativity, the innovation, always thinking about what next and what's out there. So they're the kind of attributes at a high level. Again, I don't think I'll be breaking any confidentiality if I said if you wanted to see what sits underneath each of these with the new title instead of Fabulously Furry, I will
happily
circulate
share.
those. Yeah.
Thank you. So a big lesson learned, and I think for everybody, when you are trying to push boundaries, come up with something that, is a little bit different, it is important to test. And that testing process is something that we built into this process, and thank goodness we did.
Well, yes.
So we feel very relieved about that. Now, it doesn't mean as well, what I would say is, that inclusivity piece will remain when we rename this value, but I think from a brand perception perspective, we have to be just really cautious around that.
Imagine if we'd have found out just today.
Yes. Someone would have told us on Slido, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we now? So what we've had to do as well is work really closely with the brand team at Compare the Market. Who knew that these characters were so well guarded and protected, and all of the ways in which you can use them has to follow a certain pathway. So the other thing that we learnt was that the meerkats and the wombats don't actually live in our world. So when we combine in our colleagues with them, they're not really in the same world as us. They're in more of a virtual world.
Fictional world, yeah.
So what we wanted to do was to work out how to get that connection between colleagues and how their authentic personalities could feature in the employer brand, but how we could maximise the brand in this way. So what we've done is we've found a way of combining through Characterful careers all of the wonderful people that exist within Compare the Market, but also using some of those characters to grab attention and to get people externally really interested, but also internally across our communications to actually bring them in and give them a bit more of a personality that people want to see. So what we've been able to do as well is there's certain ways of writing within Compare the Market. So how headlines are structured, we've followed exactly the same headline structure as what you would probably see in any campaigns externally for Compare the Market if you are a customer. If you're not, I'm sure you will be after today. So, and then also, what we're doing at the moment is we're building out guidelines that have to be approved by the brand team. So those guidelines take the same features that exist in the brand. So same colour palette, same logos, same fonts. And what we're doing is we're creating a close sister to that main brand so that we can communicate in a way that they're very happy with and they feel really comfortable with, that runs through everything that we do. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's been really important as well is to give the team at Compare the Market more collateral to use across all of their attraction, their internal communications, and everything that they're doing for the employer brand, basically.
It is a bit annoying that we can't use the characters and people together. But I've not given up on that battle yet because
we tried,
and because we've just announced our sponsorship of the 100 go this summer. Nice cricket tournament, and I think the meerkats are going to appear alongside the cricketers, so they're going to come into our world. So I feel confident that as we evolve this, we'll see characters and actual people in the same universe.
In the same universe.
I do see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah. So that's, and what is interesting, and I think one of the learns is you can push brand teams, you can challenge brand teams around what can be achieved. And that's a good example of how we've been able to do that. The other thing, naturally, you'll all be very, very aware of the importance of authenticity in photography, video content. So naturally, we've got a team of people at Compare the Market ready to get involved in the shoot. They're gearing up for next week, and they're going to be creating all of the content that will then sit within the campaign. The video content as well will go across the careers site, across social media campaigns as well. And then...
Yeah, so we have every year we have something called Stratfest. You'll all probably have similar things. It's an annual full company event about, well, strategy and etc. And we're going to Silverstone in September. So we're having some fun there around, that's where we're going to launch this properly. We're hoping to bring some values in. Do we talk about values in a minute, or do I talk about it now?
No.
Okay, yeah. Good. I have prepared, honestly. So we're gonna launch it properly then. It gives us a really good opportunity to bring this to life a bit, just kind of hit people with it in one go. So that's a brilliant opportunity. We'd like to do it now, but we think it's worth waiting and doing it with a bit of a bigger bang. One of the things I talked about earlier was that when we found out about furries, one thing. The other thing that we found out that we weren't intended to, and actually what our CEO said to us was, this is not an exercise to look at your values. We're not going to change the values. We've got values. We love them. They're in. People really get them. But they were a bit old BGL, a little bit corporate, a little bit kind of not this kind of fun dynamic. Now, during all the work that Sarah and team did, everyone was saying, this is all great. We've got to look at our values. So kind of took me a couple of times to go back. And then in the end, kind of faced with all of that evidence that people are saying, that kind of touch points, it falls down at our values. We kind of get them and nothing not to like, but they're not really us. We are now, well, we're midway through a project to relook at values, which will align much more closely to this. So it has taken us, this whole journey's taken us in kind of different directions than we thought at first, but it's more work for you, so it's all good, right?
And I think the other thing that's been fantastic as well is how everybody across these different segments of the candidate life cycle and the employee life cycle have been engaged. So the employer brand is very much something that everyone's been involved with. So we conducted right at the beginning a workshop, a talent life cycle workshop, where all of the teams and the owners of these segments came along and they brought what their future needs were. So they talked to us about, okay, we've got this launching over here, we're looking at recognition, we're looking at how we communicate as a comms team, what channels are best, what content is best for people. So what we were able to do was ensure that not only are we launching the employer brand in September, but we're also aware of all of the different activities that employer brand needs to touch throughout the next year, 2 years and beyond. I think that's really important from a longevity perspective. Mm-hmm. Too often an employer brand might just sit in attraction. So it might just be something that is communicated externally, but then when those people arrive and they come on board, do they necessarily have that same communication throughout the whole journey of being onboarded and brought into the organisation?
I think the other important point on that, though, on that journey is we have taken a decision not to have everything ready for September, to not have it because we'd still be talking about this in 3 years' time probably. So although we launch in September, we know we've then got work to do on, aligning our behaviours, aligning all of these touch points. So you can wait. We did discuss it. Let's wait till it's all done and then do it all. But we've decided to launch, go out there, and then gradually bring everything else aligned behind it. I think that's okay.
Yeah, that happens frequently. And I think a lot of the materials that the teams will need will be within the toolkit and the guidelines, so people will be able to work with it internally themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, last point is, why do all this if you're not going to measure that it's made a difference to you as an organisation? So one of the things that we do at SMRS is we make sure that when we do these kind of projects, we measure it and we understand that we align to our purpose, which is to change organisations for the better. So if we're going on this journey and we're helping an organisation in this way, we'll bring in our specialists, so our data scientists, our data analysts, and we'll start to create a suite of measures for a client, usually through a dashboard format, so that you can actually say, right, what is important to us and how do we go about measuring that? So these are all of the different areas that we've just pinpointed. So working with Compare the Market, we'll identify and prioritise which of these are most important, ensure that we've got a sort of a ground, like a starting point position, and then we can measure over 6, 12, 18 months, or we can even measure monthly. So I think that's a really important aspect for anybody today. Just, think about your measures and think about how you can do that. One of the massive issues is the data is often in 20 different places. So that's one of the challenges we find. But once you pull it all together and you can work out a better way of doing it, I think it's really important. So we have, I think, created a very characterful employer brand. I think what's important is it's come from the people. Not only has the passion and enthusiasm for the attributes come from everybody, but we've sense checked it and we know that we're going to land hopefully in a really good place when we launch it in September.
Yeah.
Any final words, Caroline?
No, I'm happy to take any questions. I'm happy to speak to people afterwards. Yes, questions. I can see a nod. Everybody's journey is going to be different, is what I would say, and just be open-minded if you're going to go down this route about where it might take you. I think that's probably my biggest learning.
Yeah.
Thank you to both of you. Big round of applause, please.